Kalorama, a recorded books hybrid imprint, presents Drawing Lines: Why Conservatives Must Begin to Battle Fiercely in the Arena of Ideas by Kira Davis, read by Madeline Mccray. Introduction. There is a time for everything and a season for every activity under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verses 1 through 8. The summer of 2020, which I like to refer to as the summer OBLM, the summer of Black Lives Matter, hit me with a double whammy. Our state and local governments were leaning hard into COVID overreach, and I was disappointed in myself for ever thinking the majority of Americans would choose freedom over government-enforced safety. The solutions didn't seem to at all match the problem, and yet we were hurtling headfirst into all the wrong decisions. This mother's heart was breaking to see my eldest robbed of his senior year of high school and then his freshman year of college. It all felt like a knife in the back. Then the knife was twisted. Even as the lockdown forever crowd were calling their fellow citizens murderers and granny killers for wanting to keep their businesses open and kids in school, those same people were cheering on the thousands of protesters pouring into the streets to protest police brutality. It was a slap in the face, and I think it stung more for me because I was being told I was supposed to support the chaos in the streets because I am Black. It made me angry. Here I was trying to launch my Black son into his next phase in life and doing something the protesters kept telling us was nearly impossible for too many Black men. We were sending him to college. Instead of being celebrated, he was being tied down. We watched as rioters were treated as mostly peaceful heroes, and my son was treated as though he were a walking biological weapon. I'd had enough. None of this made sense, and I was tired of feeling so confused all the time. I'd been calling for peace, for grace, for understanding. But I'd not been calling for action. I realized all these people were getting what they wanted because they were behaving badly. Conservatives like me were standing by, feeling anxious, feeling like things just weren't fair. We imagined we'd settle it all at the ballot box, but that's not what happened either. Things only got worse. I realized the time had come for us to get uncomfortable. We were just as much to blame for the chaos as the rioters and looters. We stood by, pretending we were the peaceful ones, when perhaps we were often just being the weak ones. We did not take charge of the direction of our politics the way the left does, and we were paying for it. That's when I realized there is a time for everything. And perhaps our time had come to get a little bolder, a little louder, a little more insistent. The time has come. The time for live and let live has drawn to a close, at least temporarily. For too long, right-of-center Americans have been satisfied to leave their voices to the ballot box. They're not interested in constant agitation or protesting. They have an innate distrust of government and therefore often leave the distasteful job of governing and monitoring those who govern to others. The truth is, most people just want to go to work, earn a living, and go home to their families. They expect the people they elected to protect their rights and leave them alone. Sometimes the political right has been too satisfied to give their voice to a personality. We conservatives like to ridicule our liberal counterparts for being so enamored with the political utterances of celebrities and so convinced their favorite politicians are good and right and unassailable. We laugh at their naivete and their blind devotion to media and political personalities based on what they wish that person was, rather than who they are in reality. We are deceiving ourselves if we think that is a quality exclusive to the left. We do it too. We trash progressives for lending undue weight to celebrity commentary, but when a celebrity strays into right-wing territory, conservatives go nuts for them. We should be careful not to presume idol worship is exclusive to an ideology. Where we were once just locked in an endless go-round with ideological opposites, now we find ourselves on the losing end of a lot of important social issues and pushed out of the mechanisms of choice. The global pandemic stripped us of a lot of the beautiful distractions this country has to offer. Suddenly, we are staring at the raw condition of our society, and the image staring back does not reflect the America we thought or hoped we were living in. Parents have found themselves at odds with their own school districts. Businesses have found themselves at the mercy of flaky and hypocritical politicians. Our elections process has been thrown into an atmosphere of chaos and distrust. We currently reside under an administration that is failing the American people at every juncture. Everything seems upside down, and no one seems quite sure what to do to set it right. I have built a brand on reaching out to the other side, on giving people space to be wrong, the space to discuss, the space to tolerate. I sincerely believe there are many reasonable people in America from all ideologies who are still willing to talk with each other, people who are quite happy to live and let live, even if they do find each other more than a bit annoying. Unfortunately, none of those people are controlling the conversations right now. Trump's presidency has burned away the niceties that tenuously held our political ecosystem together. We've had a front row seat to the strategy of the progressive left. We're seeing the lengths they will go to and the lies they let stand in service of winning and crushing 50% of this nation. The onslaught of dishonesty has been relentless. The progressive left isn't happy to just let us live with our own values, our own media, our own cultural verticals. They seek unity, but only at the cost of the thorough elimination of the other side. There are times for compromise and times to draw a line in the sand. And friends, The latter has arrived. It is time to draw our lines. Many thought the battle was the election, but that was simply the opening shot fired. The actual battle is unfolding before our very eyes across every single social class and industry. Progressive-run media entities are deliberately misleading their viewers, covering up information the public deserves to know, and engaging in the type of censorship and malpractice that would have ended their publications and channels 50 years ago. Hollywood Productions and Major League Baseball called for boycotts of Georgia and Texas over their attempts to pass election integrity legislation. Airline companies and Coca-Cola very publicly registered their condemnation. These entities and the people who run them constantly bemoan the division in this country, even as they willingly make half of their customer base into automatic enemies with every new statement of protest they register. They have made what we eat and drink political. They have made biology political. They have made flying political. They have made our national pastime political. The election of Donald Trump put windows in the factory and gave us a terrifying glimpse into how the sausage gets made. The ousting of Trump should have closed the shades, but instead, it has shed even more light on the ugly process. Now we're not just seeing how the sausage gets made. We're watching the animals be butchered in real time. It's not pretty, and that means the coming shift change at that factory won't be pretty either. Inspiration. The first part of this introduction is based on a column I wrote for Red State, where I have been editor-at-large and now deputy managing editor for the past several years. All the letters and questions I fielded from frustrated listeners and readers were weighing on my heart. I felt it was time for a call to action. I don't think very many conservative pundits have been reminding folks they don't just have to look at the left and feel impotent as they shout and loot their way to everything they want. I felt moved to provide a little push, a little reminder that sometimes you have to decide where you draw the line and then defend that line. My friend and colleague, Katie Pavlich, Fox News contributor, town hall editor, and professional pretty lady, hit me up immediately after the column published. "Kira, this needs to be a book," she virtually shouted over a DM. She threw me for a loop. A book? Me? I'm a column writer. I write in fits and bursts about lots of different things. I find it amazing anyone wants to read 1,000 words from me, let alone 50,000. The thing about Katie is I have never known her to be anything but sincere. She wouldn't have reached out to me like that if she didn't mean what she said, and Katie is someone I respect in the industry. If she thought it would be a good idea, then perhaps it was worth a shot. I'm so glad she reached out to me that day. As I was writing this book, I began thinking about all the conservatives like me out there who feel beat up, disenfranchised, and confused about the current confused state of our confused society. I receive messages and emails from people every week telling me they feel helpless in the face of all the turmoil of the past 2 years. They want to help, they want to protect, and they even want to change, but they just don't know where to start. I think the message encompassed in this book is needed, I think conservatives need encouragement, need reminding they aren't powerless, and I think we all need to be reminded that we've been far too comfortable for far too long, and we are paying the price for that unchecked comfort. Warnings and definitions before we get started. I first want to clarify a couple of things. You'll see me using the term progressive a lot. In some rare cases, I will use liberal. It is important for you to know that in my mind, a liberal and a progressive are not the same thing. I consider a progressive more like an alt-left ideologue, a growing and rabid fringe. They rarely pause for reason or compromise. Occasionally, I will use the terms interchangeably. The way left-wing people look at the alt-right is exactly how I view the alt-left. When I use the term liberal, I'm simply referring to those who identify politically as left of center. Some conservatives might refer to them as classical liberals. These are the people who definitely don't share my ideology or beliefs but aren't maniacs about it. They believe in heated discussion and the power of persuasion. They love their country and they make no apologies for their bias, just as conservatives make no such apologies. What I'm trying to say is that they're normal. Liberal friends, if you're listening to this, please know I am not talking about you. I am talking about the progressive fringe lunatics who have managed to push their way into the mainstream of left-wing politics, effectively pushing out more and more reasonable liberals. I try to be clear about the difference. My apologies if sometimes I don't always get it right. Also, as you listen, understand this book is not written for you. I have something for you, hopefully in the near future, but this is not it. So as you feel your blood start to boil at my missives and descriptions and calls to action, try to remind yourself you are not the target audience for this book. This book is for conservatives. I'm speaking their language, addressing their concerns, and drawing on their shared political experiences. Try to keep that in mind as you listen. It will make things easier for you. The noisy season. We should be a people of ideological peace. It's what we should want, anyway. These constant battles are draining, and I think most conservatives are feeling exhausted with it all these days. Peace is good, and it's what we all look to when it comes to the future for our children. But sometimes peace cannot simply be willed. It must be wrestled. Bold action feels distasteful for a lot of average conservatives, but we need only to look at our left-wing counterparts to see how effective it can be. We're going to have to accept that a peaceful coexistence with our ideological opponents will have to be won. It will not be given. The trickle is starting, but we need to create a roaring river, a current of good sense. It is time to put diplomacy on pause. It has its place, and for those of us still engaged in public debate and discussion, we should never completely abandon it. Persuasion is a vital part of winning any culture war. There is a value in walking softly, but sometimes persuasion can only be made palatable to the other side by carrying a big stick. So draw your line. Decide where it is. It won't be the same for all of us. Your line will be different from my line, and that's okay. The battle has many fronts. But it's important to understand this. The quiet season is over. We are in a noisy season. Grab a bullhorn and start screaming. Chapter 1. Women's Rights and the Transgender Movement. Few social contagions have enjoyed more rapid expansion than the transgender movement. 10 years ago, it would have been unthinkable to put a boy in a sports bra and force his way onto a girls' soccer team. Now girls are being suspended from their own teams for daring to protest boys walking onto their teams and dominating their sports. Title IX, built to protect women against discrimination in academia, athletics, and other professional and educational arenas that receive federal funding, is collapsing under the weight of a misogynist movement that dons a dress and lipstick and calls itself equality. How did we get here? The slippery slope. The progressive left in this country does not believe there is such a thing as a slippery slope. They think that it is solely a construct of the political right, a fantasy old white men dreamt up in the smoking lounges of exclusive men-only country clubs as they sip expensive scotch, torsos draped in velvet robes, grouching non-stop about how things used to be. They can think this because the hallmark of the progressive left mindset is the ability to memory hole history. They can spend enormous amounts of energy ridiculing and raging against Donald Trump for claiming his re-election was manipulated and stolen, while somehow having no memory at all of Hillary Clinton and her supporters claiming for 4 years that the election of 2016 was manipulated and stolen. They can hail the late Senator John McCain as a maverick hero for preventing the final nail in the coffin of Obamacare. They can praise him for being the anti-Republican Republican and write glowing think pieces on his bravery and leadership, while somehow having no memory at all about the horrible way they treated him when he was running against Barack Obama for the highest office in the land. McCain was accused of being a feeble, racist, dangerous Nazi sympathizer who did everything but kill puppies. No, that was an accusation they saved for their other new favorite Republican son, Mitt Romney. The progressive left has successfully forgotten their absolute disdain for the Romneys and their claims that not only were they as awful and racist as their Republican predecessors, they were basically puppy killers. Romney, for some weird reason, told a funny "I'm just like you" story about how they used to put their pup in a crate tied to the top of their car when they would go on family road trips. After that, he was not only a Jim Crow sympathizing racist Republican, he was a serial dog abuser, which is just about the worst thing you can be these days, right behind someone who refuses to pretend biology doesn't exist. Have you seen their take on George Bush lately? I'm old enough to remember when George Bush was the worst person in the world, according to the left wing. He was a warmonger, a greedy oil baron, and the reason we were attacked on 9/11. His twin daughters were mercilessly picked apart in the media for the crime of being teenagers. He was the devil incarnate who stole an election with hanging chads and a cabal of deep state minions. He was the first president I recall getting the literally Hitler treatment. The way some people describe President Bush for 8 years was heinous and calculatedly cold. There was no room for nuance. It was nonstop, wall-to-wall, daily, hourly criticism from the left, not just the alt-left that is represented by the increasingly crazed progressive crowd, but liberals in general. He was blamed for not transforming into a dictator and taking over the city of New Orleans to render aid during Hurricane Katrina. The things said about his intentions and actions regarding that storm and the breaking of the levees that ended up sinking parts of New Orleans were truly the most harsh, vile things I have ever heard uttered about a sitting president. In a sneak preview into the chaotic mind of one of the most hailed artists in the world, Kanye West co-hosted a segment of a charity telethon with actor Mike Myers and infamously and bizarrely blurted out, apropos of nothing, "George Bush hates black people." If you are one of those problematic people who memory holds your own inconvenient narratives, then perhaps you don't remember this, in which case I implore you to look up the clip, not for Kanye, but for the reaction of his co-host Mike Myers. It was a live national broadcast at a time when streaming platforms had not yet become a part of daily life. It seemed as though everyone in the country was watching this telethon. Myers, who is not a political celebrity and certainly wasn't prepared for the outburst, was frozen in horror. It remains perhaps one of the funniest things I've ever seen on live television. All that to say that George Bush was accused of being a dictator and evil patriarch, and it was merciless and endless coming from the left. Now he's just a quaint, cute old man who paints pictures and hangs out with the Obamas. So yes, it is incredibly easy to deny a slippery slope exists when you don't even have a memory of the hill behind you and you never look back to see where you've come from. Those on the right perhaps could be accused of employing the worry of slippery slopes a bit too liberally, pun intended. There's certainly no denying that we talk about it a lot. I recall going to see Dinesh D'Souza's documentary on Barack Obama in 2012. It was about where the deliberately destructive plans of the Obama administration would lead us, culminating in what could be a terrifying and apocalyptic collapse in 2016. Obama was painted as nothing less than a dictator who may actually be willing to suspend elections and declare himself an emperor. While I can already hear some people listening to this passage and running down a list in their minds of all the ways he damaged this country irreparably, if we can be reasonable for a moment, we can at least all agree that America did not crumble. The apocalypse did not descend, and Obama left office peacefully, albeit with a lot of salt in his mouth. Perhaps D'Souza was overstating things just a bit for the big screen. America did indeed survive the Obama years. I'm a big believer in self-awareness as a tool of logic. We on the right bear a good share of the blame for overreacting when we should be reasoning, and thus adding to the sense of hostility in discourse. Regardless, we're not making up the slippery slope. It exists, and we're sliding down it in real time. The vertical drop. When the battle over gay marriage was still raging in this country, many conservatives stood in opposition on religious and moral grounds, but others opposed the notion for fear it might send us into a spiral of never-ending identity groups asking for the same accommodations. The argument was that while it certainly shouldn't matter to any other individual who you decide to call your husband or wife, changing the legal definition of an historical constant could lead to a chaotic decline in order. They were, of course, scoffed at and shamed as hysterical bigots. Some may well have been, but many were making at the very least a salient argument that deserved to be aired out and looked at.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?